Chapter 1. The Curious Little Village. Nestled between rolling hills and a dense forest lay the quaint village of Eldermere. The cobbled streets buzzed with activity as merchants hawked their wares, children played, and townsfolk exchanged stories. Eldermere was known for many things: its blooming meadows, crystal-clear streams, and the warm camaraderie of its people. But above all, it was famous for one peculiar figure, an old woman named Granny Clara. Granny Clara's tiny cottage stood at the edge of the village, surrounded by a vibrant garden bursting with sunflowers, marigolds, and lavender. Her garden was more than a collection of plants. It was a testament to her outlook on life, always nurturing, always blossoming, regardless of the season. Visitors often remarked on the serenity of her home, where the air seemed sweeter and the colors more vivid, as if the very earth responded to Clara's boundless cheer. She was not just any old woman, she was a beacon of happiness and wisdom. No matter the storm, literal or metaphorical, she remained cheerful. Clara's ability to find joy in the smallest things baffled many. While others grumbled about mundane troubles, Clara marveled at a morning dewdrop or the chirp of a bird. Her contentment was infectious, a warmth that enveloped anyone who spent time in her company. Curious villagers and travelers alike visited Clara, seeking the secret to her happiness. They came with questions, from the profound to the trivial, and Clara always had a way of answering with stories or metaphors that lingered in the mind like echoes. Clara, with her wrinkled smile and twinkling eyes, would often respond, "Happiness isn't about avoiding storms. It's about learning to dance in the rain." Her words were simple, yet they carried the weight of a life fully lived. Each visitor left her home with a piece of her wisdom, pondering her enigmatic yet profound answers long after they'd left. Chapter 2. A Stranger's Quest. One fine spring morning, a weary traveler named Lila arrived in Eldermere. She was young, with deep-set eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and burdens carried far too long. Her journey had been one of constant struggle, navigating through countless trials that left her yearning for solace. She carried with her only a small satchel of belongings and an even smaller reservoir of hope, clinging to the whispers she had heard about a wise woman in this very village. "You're looking for Granny Clara, aren't you?" a friendly baker asked, noticing her somber expression as she lingered near his stall. Lila nodded. "I've heard she knows the secret to happiness. Do you know where I might find her?" The baker chuckled warmly. "She does indeed, but her answers aren't what most people expect. You'll find her at the edge of the village. Follow the path lined with sunflowers, and you can't miss her cottage." Grateful for the guidance, Lila followed the directions with a mix of nervousness and anticipation. She noticed the sunflower path before she saw the cottage, their golden faces turned toward the sun as if welcoming her to this new chapter. Clara's cottage was exactly as Lila had imagined, a charming little home surrounded by a vibrant garden teeming with life. Flowers of every hue swayed in the breeze, and the air was filled with the fragrance of lavender and marigold. Seated amidst this colorful haven was an old woman humming a cheerful tune as she tended to her plants. Her hands, though weathered with age, moved with practiced care, and her presence radiated an almost tangible serenity. Before Lila could even summon the courage to knock, the old woman looked up and smiled. "Come in, child," Clara greeted warmly. Her voice was as soothing as the rustle of leaves on a summer afternoon. "I've been expecting you." Lila paused, surprised by the greeting. "You have?" Clara's smile deepened, her eyes twinkling with an almost mischievous light. "Perhaps not you specifically, but I knew someone in need would find their way here today. You see, this garden has a way of calling out to those who need its peace." unsure of how to respond, Lila stepped closer, feeling both welcomed and disarmed by Clara's openness. The older woman gestured to a wicker chair near her, inviting her to sit. As Lila settled into the seat, she couldn't help but notice the sense of calm that seemed to envelop the space. The chirping of birds, the gentle hum of bees, and the rhythmic sway of the flowers created a symphony of tranquility. For a moment, neither spoke. Clara continued tending to her plants, giving Lila the space to take in her surroundings. Finally, Lila found her voice. "I've traveled a long way to find you," she began hesitantly. "People say you hold the secret to happiness." Clara laughed softly, the sound light and unassuming. "Oh, my dear, happiness isn't a treasure hidden in a chest, or a secret locked away. It's something far simpler and yet infinitely complex. But tell me, what is it you're searching for? What troubles you so deeply that you've come all this way?" Lila hesitated, unsure if she could put her feelings into words. But there was something about Clara's presence that invited honesty. Slowly, she began to speak, sharing the burdens she had carried for so long. As the words flowed, Clara listened intently, her expression one of unwavering empathy. By the time Lila finished, she felt a weight had lifted, though she didn't yet understand why. Clara leaned back in her chair, her gaze thoughtful. "You've carried much for someone so young," she said gently, "but you've done the hardest part. You've sought help. That's the first step toward finding joy again. Rest here for now. The answers will come in time." And with that, Clara returned to her gardening, leaving Lila to sit amidst the blossoms and ponder what the old woman meant. In that moment, though she didn't realize it yet, Lila had already begun her journey toward happiness. Chapter 3. The First Lesson. Over a cup of chamomile tea, Lila poured out her troubles. She spoke of loss, betrayal, and the overwhelming weight of expectations. Clara listened attentively, her expression gentle and empathetic. She nodded at times, her hands gently clasping the warm teacup in front of her, as if its warmth could soothe the ache in Lila's words. "Happiness, my dear, is not the absence of hardship," Clara began, her voice steady yet soothing. "It's the ability to find joy despite it. Let me show you something." Clara stood, her movements deliberate yet fluid, and beckoned Lila to follow her outside. She led her through the garden, a place that seemed to breathe with life. The air was fragrant with the scent of marigolds, and bees buzzed softly around them. Clara stopped near a sunflower that stood tall and radiant among its companions. "Do you see how this sunflower turns its face toward the sun?" Clara asked, a soft smile playing on her lips. "Even on cloudy days it seeks the light. You must do the same." "But how?" Lila questioned, her voice tinged with a mix of doubt and yearning. "Start small," Clara replied, crouching to touch the soil near the sunflower's base. "Each morning, find one thing to be grateful for. Gratitude is the seed from which happiness grows, and like this garden, it requires care, patience, and love to flourish." Lila stared at the sunflower, its golden petals glowing against the green backdrop. She felt something stir within her, a faint glimmer of understanding, though still out of reach. As the day wore on, Clara shared stories of her own trials, weaving them with lessons she had learned. She spoke of a time when her garden was destroyed by a storm, yet how replanting it had brought her an unexpected joy. "It's not about avoiding storms, Lila, but about learning to dance through them." That night, as Lila lay in the cozy guest room Clara had offered, she reflected on her journey. The exhaustion from her travels lingered, yet for the first time in a long while, it was accompanied by a faint flicker of hope. She decided to take Clara's advice to heart. She closed her eyes and, before sleep claimed her, listed one thing she was grateful for: the kindness of strangers who had guided her to this place. The act felt small, almost insignificant, but as she whispered her gratitude into the quiet night, Lila sensed the faintest beginning of a shift within her, a seed taking root in the fertile soil of possibility. Chapter 4. The Trials of Gratitude. Over the following weeks, Clara guided Lila through various lessons. One morning, Clara handed her a cracked teapot. "This belonged to my mother," Clara explained. "It's broken, but still precious. Sometimes we need to focus on what remains, not what is lost." At first, Lila didn't understand. The cracked teapot seemed like an odd metaphor, but Clara's words lingered in her mind. She began to apply this idea to her daily life. She started paying attention to small moments she once overlooked. A neighbor's kind wave, the warm aroma of bread wafting from the bakery, and even the sparkle of raindrops on a windowsill became sources of quiet joy. Clara encouraged her to keep a gratitude journal, where she listed these observations each evening. As the days turned into weeks, Lila's perspective began to shift. She noticed the beauty in imperfections, the charm of a lopsided smile, the resilience of a tree growing in rocky soil, or the way cracked pottery could still hold water. She marveled at how life seemed to persist and adapt no matter the odds. The once mundane aspects of her life now seemed extraordinary. Her gratitude practice deepened, and with it, her happiness. Each day felt lighter, her burdens easier to bear, and her heart more open to the world's small but profound wonders. Clara often reminded her, "Gratitude isn't about ignoring the cracks, my dear. It's about seeing how those cracks make the whole even more precious. They tell a story of endurance, much like your own." Lila smiled as she held the cracked teapot one afternoon, finally understanding the depth of Clara's lesson. It was not just an object, but a symbol of embracing life's imperfections, cherishing what remains, and finding beauty in what once seemed broken. For the first time in years, Lila felt a profound sense of peace. Chapter 5. Embracing Change. One day, a fierce storm swept through Eldermere, bringing torrents of rain, roaring winds, and a darkness that lingered long after the skies cleared. Trees were uprooted, houses damaged, and streets flooded with debris. Villagers wandered around in despair, their faces etched with worry and disbelief. But amidst the chaos, Clara remained calm, her composure like a steady flame in the storm's aftermath. "Why aren't you upset?" Lila asked, bewildered by Clara's serene demeanor, as they assessed the damage to her garden. The once vibrant patch of sunflowers and marigolds now lay flattened, their stems broken and petals scattered across the muddy ground. "Change is inevitable, my dear," Clara said, her voice steady and warm despite the destruction around them. "Fighting it only brings misery. Instead, we must adapt and grow. Like the river that carves through stone, persistence and flexibility can overcome anything." She knelt beside the remains of her garden and picked up a battered sunflower, cradling it as if it were a precious treasure. "Even in this, there is beauty if you choose to see it." Moved by Clara's perspective, Lila joined her in clearing the wreckage. Together they worked tirelessly, salvaging what they could and clearing the soil to make way for new growth. Clara handed Lila a small packet of seeds, their potential a quiet symbol of hope. "These seeds will bloom again," Clara said with a smile. "It's not about mourning what's lost, but about celebrating what can still be." As the days passed, Lila found herself transformed by the process of rebuilding. She noticed the resilience in Clara's every action, the way her hands carefully tended to the soil, her gentle encouragement when things seemed overwhelming, and her unwavering belief that renewal was always possible. By the end of the week, the garden began to show signs of life. Tiny sprouts emerged from the earth, a testament to their hard work and faith in the future. Lila realized that even in destruction, there was an opportunity for renewal, a chance to create something even more beautiful than before. She understood now that embracing change wasn't just about survival, it was about growth, finding strength in adaptability and believing in the possibilities that lay ahead. The storm, once a source of despair, became a catalyst for transformation and hope. Chapter 6. Spreading Joy. As Lila's perspective shifted, so did her interactions with others. She began helping villagers in various ways, sharing not only the lessons she'd learned, but also her newfound sense of peace and purpose. She organized gatherings where children could explore their creativity through stories and games, teaching them to find joy in simple things like the beauty of nature or the fun of shared laughter. She encouraged adults to embrace gratitude, resilience, and the value of supporting one another during difficult times. Lila's efforts didn't go unnoticed. The villagers began to mirror her actions, spreading positivity among themselves. "You've become as wise as Granny Clara," they said with admiration, marveling at the transformation in her demeanor and outlook. Lila laughed, a sound as warm and uplifting as a summer breeze. "I've merely learned to seek the light, just like the sunflower," she replied, her smile reflecting the inner joy she now carried everywhere she went. And just as the sunflower turns to the sun, Lila became a source of hope and light for all who knew her. Chapter 7. The Final Lesson. Before leaving Eldermere, Lila asked Clara one last question. "What is the ultimate secret to happiness?" Clara's eyes sparkled. "Happiness is a choice, dear. It's not about waiting for perfect moments, but making every moment perfect. Life is fleeting, so cherish it, scars and all." With Clara's words etched in her heart, Lila embarked on a new journey. She faced challenges with courage, finding joy even in adversity. Her time in Eldermere had transformed her, and she carried Granny Clara's wisdom wherever she went. Epilogue. Years later, Lila returned to Eldermere, now an old woman herself. Clara's cottage was still there, tended by a new generation of villagers inspired by her legacy. Lila shared her own stories, ensuring Clara's lessons lived on. The spirit of happiness that Granny Clara embodied continued to ripple through Eldermere and beyond, proving that joy truly could be found in every situation.